Pregnancy and Sweden. Two questions that can destroy your world. Can you be honest? Not with me, I don't care. I'll never know. But with yourself? Because if you answer these questions honestly, it could be the worst day of your life. Note to censors, we use only government data. If you have a problem with the results, speak to the government. You and I have a lot in common. We agree that the governments of the UK, US and Canada have stated that COVID-19 is a dangerous virus. It could lead to 510,000 deaths in the UK, 2.2 million in the US. That lockdown is necessary to slow the spread of the disease, though there will be no normal till the vaccine. So answer two simple questions for me, and we'll see if this is going to be one of the best days of your life or one of the worst. Question 1. If 27 women have a great New Year's Eve party and find out they're pregnant in January, how many will give birth to a healthy, fully grown infant in February the next month? Question 2. Have 100,000 people died due to COVID-19 in Sweden? Take your time and only continue when you're ready. If your brain is already trying to figure out how to explain it, if you've been tricked by me, or if I say something you don't like, good. We've established that your brain is working. Now there's plenty of places you can look, but here's the most recent World Health Organization report for COVID-19 situation report. You can fact check it from the link below, or go to Bing or Wikipedia. 4659. Not exactly 100,000, is it? But it's not over. Fine, it's at peak, so double it, 9318. Is that close to 100,000? Not really, is it? Belgium's been sensible, but the funny thing is, it's had the most babies in the world right now, 83,000 of them. Britain, Chastity Belt Britain, has had the second most babies in the world when you adjust for population, 60,000 of them. Spain, Catholic Spain, so you know they've been careful and quite severe about it, but they've still had 58,000 babies. Strange, isn't it, when they were being so careful? Not like the Far East. I mean, I don't like to be racist, but Australians, they're not like us. They can't be. They were also careful and only had 396. 396, whereas careful Belgium had 83,000. Strict Spain had 58,000, and You Can't UK had 60,000, and Australia had 396. Did we miss something? Should we perhaps be speaking to the parents? Ours or theirs? Italy, home of the Catholic Church, so you know they're strict, and they had 56,000 babies, whereas Thailand, oh don't speak to me about the unspeakable Thailand, they had 83. Excuse me? Yes, 83. But Thailand, you know, can you trust the government over there? How about New Zealand then? 439. But it's a small country. No, we've already scaled it up to a uniform 100 million population. Now, if we were talking about the effectiveness of, I don't know, say a birth control pill, would you think that there was something wrong if those oh-so-advanced and scientific Western nations were getting uncontrolled births in the 60,000 to 80,000 range, and those, sorry to be rude, not so sophisticated nations over there were getting uncontrolled births in the 80 to 400 range? Would you not start to question their figures? Or ours? Be honest, I recognize this is incredibly difficult. Honestly, I do. Loyalty is a wonderful thing. Loyalty and sacrifice have kept our Western nations free, and many have sacrificed their lives for the greater good of freedom. But a lot of people sacrificed their lives for the greater good of their homeland, where they were anything but free. And you know what we learned when we were growing up? Those bad nations told lies. Now, I know it's not our nations telling lies, but really that doesn't leave much choice, does it? It must be them telling lies. We can't trust the Chinese, they're communist. But Australians and New Zealanders, weren't they supposed to be just like us? Would it be rude to tell them they're lying? Maybe the answer is to look at some neutral countries, or to look at a lot of countries, because surely they couldn't or wouldn't all be lying. So why don't we parcel the various parts of the world together and see if there's some sort of geographic bias going on? Europe, the continent, not the EU, they are different, 13982. Americas, top and bottom, 4852. Eastern Mediterranean, 1569. Africa, 580. Western Pacific, 571. Far East, 329. Now, the Western Pacific would include the Chinese, and you know we've been told not to trust what they say, so that won't do. Let's exclude them and look at those figures again. Europe, same. America, same. Eastern Mediterranean, same. Africa, 580. Western Pacific, 584. Far East, 329. Did we really do so badly against America? No, that was the Americas. The USA, very strict, had 33,000 uncontrolled babies. And yet it was one of the "you're going in a nunnery to stop you having babies" countries. Very strange. Not that America as a whole was so bad, only ninth out of 214 countries, and definitely not first or worst as it so likes to be. Canada, its cousin in the prurient stakes, had 20,000 babies. Not so careful after all at position number 11, sandwiching Ecuador, which might actually have had the 20,000 babies it claims. It hasn't been banging on about the bad Chinese or shutting down democracy, or maybe I just don't know enough about the politics down there. Meantime, devout Catholic Ireland is on 33,600 babies, the prurient Dutch on 34,500 babies, and France on 43,000 babies, all of them supposedly careful nations. Honestly, to lambast Sweden for her 44,700 babies, when Belgium is on twice that and 5 countries have been more careless while sanctimoniously telling us how careful they were, and that's why we've all been sent to our homes, it seems to be a bit rich. And the virus doesn't report deaths, the government does. But I'd hate to disturb you with stories, so if you have the stomach for it, you can always check our chart update videos. But really, the main thing is that it's very strange birth control pill that seems to work perfectly in the Far East with 329 deaths per 100 million people, yet somehow as you get close to the most advanced and most powerful nations on the planet, suddenly ravages them 252 times worse, is 252 times less effective at preventing babies in Belgium's case. Now, if we were really talking about a birth control pill and Belgians were complaining that they had 252 times more babies than the Far East, but it's not our fault, it's the pill, I think there'd be a few wry smiles and the pill or the Pilsner. But gosh, it's so scary, one just can't think. And so nobody notices that the figures are absurdly higher for the most powerful nations on the planet. And the media, of course, won't tell you. Meantime, I'm a bit emotional, because I've just heard that lockdown saved 3 million lives in Europe. 470,000 people alive today in the UK thanks to lockdown. That's amazing. Really amazing, because the strange thing is, lockdown never diverted the trajectory of the virus. I mean, if a car is headed towards you and a superhero saves you, isn't it because the car suddenly veers off in another direction? Now, this is a terrible topic to discuss because we'd have to get into maths and charts, and I so don't want to do that. But again, if you're curious, you can check some of our earlier chart updates and other videos. Because all the claims we've seen for why lockdown is working, well, the simple fact is that none of them are accurate. But hey, we wouldn't want to disturb you with the facts or analysis, so we'll leave that for now. I'd much rather talk about pregnant women. You see, everything you've been told has been told to you on the basis of a model. Not the real virus, but a model. And it's a very simple model despite the supposed advanced complexity. It says that uninfected people's susceptibles go down by P each day. It also says that infected people go up by P minus Q each day. And it says that Q people recover each day. Very simple, and it's called the SIR model. Now, super strictly, the virus has an incubation period, and that's the SEIR model. but we can learn some important things, including the reason I asked you 2 questions, by looking at the SIR model. So the whole model is S.new equals minus P, I.new equals P minus Q, and R.new equals Q. Like I say, all that's saying is the uninfected people go down by P, the infected people go up by P minus Q, and the recovered people go up by Q. Obviously then, if we want to understand the model, we should understand this P and Q. Now, if either one of those is badly wrong, just plain silly, it really doesn't say much for the model. And if the model is plain wrong and silly, and it's the model that got you into lockdown, then, well, that's not just silly, that's really rather disturbing. So let's take a look at Q. This is the number of people who recover from being infected. How is it calculated in this very sophisticated model? You divide the number of infected people by the number of days of the average infection. Yes, it really is that simple. So a reasonable figure for infected might be 12 days, but let's call it 2 weeks. It could be a week. It doesn't matter, because what we're going to look at is the very idea of dividing the number of infected by that number of days to estimate the recovered patients. Does it seem all right to you at the moment? It likely won't very shortly, and then you'll either try to find an excuse because you don't want to think badly of your parent government, or you'll realize this is really bad science. Let's avoid the fear and uncertainty of the virus and stick to something simple: pregnancy. Now, hearsay has it that pregnancy lasts 9 months. It might be fake news. You might want to fact check it. However, let's go with it for the moment. Now, let's call getting pregnant as the being infected part, and giving birth as the escaping infection, recovering part. All we need is something where the first thing happens, and then a while later, the second thing happens. It's timing being something we don't really have control over. It's just a fact. Could it be 9 months 3 days or 8 months 14 days? Sure, and that's variance which we'll meet, at least if you check out our other videos. But for this video, we're keeping it really simple. It's not that we think you couldn't understand it, but in our experience, it's such an emotional topic, the virus, though pregnancy also, that it seems people can't think straight. So yes, we'll keep it simple. 9 months. Now we could translate that into days or weeks, but 9 is fine and will work in months. So recall our question 1. Question 1. If 27 women have a great New Year's Eve party and find out they're pregnant in January, how many will give birth to a healthy, fully grown infant in February, the next month? It's not a trick question, and it's nothing to do with the virus, so it should be straightforward to answer it, and you'll know it's just common sense. So what's your answer? Now, I'm just a guy not claiming any special knowledge or anything, but to a full-grown baby in just 1 month, I'd go with 0. How about you? If you think the answer is something other than 0, well, this might not make sense, but hey-ho. Why is it 0 though? Because in the millions or billions of babies that get born, none of them grow from a fertilized egg to fully grown 9-month gestated baby in just 1 month. I have no idea if this is accurate. It might be fake news, but at 4 weeks a fetus is only about 0.014 to 0.04 inches long. Appearance: an embryo at 4 weeks will begin to bear a resemblance to a small tadpole with eyes rather than an egg. What does a 4-week fetus look like? Healthfully. And there's your link. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a fully grown infant. Now, how many of our 27 women give birth to fully grown babies after just 1 month? Epidemiologists say 3. Nonsense, they never make any statement about babies. Well, if you want to use that excuse, go ahead. But let's look at the arithmetic they used, which after all is the arithmetic they used to put you in lockdown. Conception occurs at month 0. Infection occurs at day 0. Birth occurs at month 9. Recovery occurs at day 14. Are they so very different? A process is begun, the process is somewhat inevitable, not something we really have control over, and it has a fairly fixed duration, and at the end we have a happy outcome. Doesn't that reasonably cover both cases? So what's their formula, their maths, for calculating the closing events per unit time, whether it's recoveries per day or births per month? Take the starting figure, how many got infected or got pregnant, and divide by the duration. Seriously, if you want a picture to prove it and a link, here you go. Or do a search on SIR models for epidemiology. Avoiding fancy characters, we write those as ds by dt equals minus bis over n, di by dt equals bis over n minus gi, and dr by dt equals gi. S equals susceptible, uninfected, I equals infected and infectious, and R equals recovered. N is the total population. Ditching the fancy math notation, all that says is today's change in uninfected equals minus bis over n, today's change in infected equals bis over n minus gi, and today's change in recovered equals gi. And like we said, that's really only two terms, P and Q. Today's change in uninfected equals minus P, today's change in infected equals P minus Q, today's change in recovered equals Q, where P equals bis over n and Q equals gi. And G, well, don't trust me, back to Wiki. Infectious for a time period D, then G, that's supposed to be a gamma symbol, equals 1 over D. So, 14 days infectious from infected to recovered, no incubation, then G equals 1 over 14. Like we said, whether it's 12 or 14 isn't material. Whether pregnancy lasted 7 months or 21 months, ouch, normally, the issue would be the same. Fully grown babies simply do not emerge after 1 month. The point is, the model says duration from infected to recovered equals 14 or 12 or 10 or whatever, so G equals 1 over 14 or 1 over 12 or 1 over 10 or whatever. Now what does that mean? The differential equation is dr by dt equals gi, i.e. recovered today or this month, depending which time unit we're working with, equals g times I, the previous number of infected or pregnant if we're doing that. And G equals 1 over the duration equals 1 over 14 if it's the virus or days, or 1 over 9 if it's pregnancy and months. In other words, and why couldn't they just do this, it's today's recovered equals yesterday's total infected over 14, and this month's births equals last month's total pregnant over 9. So that's how they deal with calculating how many complete an event that started a duration D ago. Divide by D. So yes, if 27 women get pregnant in January and pregnancy lasts 9 months, then divide by 9 and 3 women give birth next month, leaving 24 women pregnant. With 3 births in February leaving 24, there are 24 over 9 births in March, or 2.67, leaving 21.33. And sure, you can't have 2.67, but if that was 27,000 pregnant women, you could have 2670 leaving 21,333, so we'll stick with the decimals for the moment. And in April, you'd have 21.33 over 9 equals 2.37 births, leaving 18.96 pregnant women. It may have occurred to you that this is silly. Why not simply say that the births today are those that were conceived 9 months ago? Why not say that the people recovering today got sick, infected 14 days ago? Why not indeed? So, according to the most sophisticated and important model in human history right now, no other model ended democracy and got us into lockdown. The way you handle an event with a reasonably fixed duration is you divide by the duration to see how many complete each day or week or month. Now, with 3 births in the first month, fully grown babies, completion of the pregnancy, proper completion just as it's proper recovery, their way of handling this just violated the perception of every sane human on the planet. But not yours, right? Because you know that's babies, and for viruses it's completely different. Okay, we tried, but if the flu takes a week to get over, does that mean that 1/7 of people bounce out of bed on day 1 miraculously fine, and a bit less than 1/7 on day 2 miraculously fine, until by day 7 there's only a poor minority of people actually with the flu still? Indeed, if you want a formal treatment of the inane stupidity or falsehood of their treatment, just consider that if you work it out, 10% of women are still pregnant 19 months later. Ouch. Their fancy curves say it looks like this for pregnancy, births every month. We say it looks like this. Wait 9 months and around that time births occur. So you have a choice. Stay in lockdown because of people who manage to misrepresent something as simple as waiting for that special day, recovering or having a child, or recognize that despite your massive and unswerving loyalty to the government and scientists that know that maybe you really ought to do a little fact-checking yourself. You're not a child any longer. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you're a public sector worker. Maybe you don't need to get out. Maybe free and democracy are just labels invented by white supremacist elites which don't represent your core values. Who knows? But that's half the model that put you into lockdown, and it's nonsense. Would you like to see the other half? Meantime, Ferguson is claiming 470,000 UK lives saved when it's actually zero. And yeah, you would have to understand a bit more than this to get that, so not today, but it is in my other videos. Question 2. Have 100,000 people died due to COVID-19 in Sweden? Why is this relevant? Because according to their SIR model, everyone gets infected. No one escapes. There is an 80% figure, but it's not 80% total infected. It's 80% total infected at one time. 100% get infected. Their model, their rules. So if no one escapes, how many people get infected? N, the entire population. In Sweden, that's 10 million. What was the quoted death rate? 1% of deaths. 1% of infected, March 3rd, UK CMO. So, 100,000 deaths in Sweden. No lockdown, no escape, just the 1% deaths rule. And how many have actually died with the contagion at peak and the dead centre of the G7 pack, though Germany technically declined to have such bad results? 4, 6, 5, 9, and they're at peak, a rather bizarre peak, which doesn't look like a virus peak, but the virus doesn't report results. Politicians do. Gosh, politicians lie? I know, impossible. At peak, so double it, 9318, and there's no excuse, no lockdown, no escape. You were promised $100,000. You received $9,318. Is that $100,000? No and no. No two ways about it. Sweden is solidly in the pack of Western countries despite no lockdown, and the Western countries are being absurdly hit by comparison to the Far East. So what you were told would happen in a no-lockdown scenario hasn't happened. Were they lucky? Or is the penny finally beginning to drop? That massive pack loyalty beginning to quiver just in the slightest? Still not there? Then shall we show you what the world's foremost model for contagion says should happen, and show you what really happens, what even the government says really happens. This is the second term, not second wave, not second term of the president, the P term. Go figure. AKA BSI over N. So the P term, BSI over N, and to think about that, it will help to notice that B, spread or speed, such that R0 equals B over G according to Wiki, and the N, the number of people in the population, are constants, so we can ignore them. Yes, to do a calculation we use B and N, but no, to think about them we can set N equals B if you like, so it simplifies to SI. You do this all the time. You don't need to know the amount to think about interest rates. The key element is R, the interest rate. Likewise, if BSI over N were e.g. the acceleration of an electric car, we might have B the battery voltage and N the net weight of the car, more battery, faster, heavier car, slower, fine. We get that. But the question is, what's S and I? That might be S, the setting of the accelerator pedal, and I, the incidence of battery power remaining, whatever. The point is that you can then focus on the two things that change, S and I, and factor in the two things that don't change, B and N, later. They're just scaling factors. So here's the other key component of the model that got you into lockdown. And what does it say? new infected equals SI, the escaped so far susceptibles multiplied by the infected so far. Here's the first critical question. Can anyone escape? Or put another way, when the new infected equals 0, is anyone left? Well, how would SI equal 0? If and only if S equals 0 or I equals 0. I equals 0, there's nobody to start the infection. Great. S equals 0, nobody escapes. That's it. It doesn't matter if you're in a hermetically sealed bunker on oxygen. The official model is no one escapes. 100% infected. Gee, they lied and underscared you. Go figure. And what's the second feature? Now we need N back. Newly infected equals S times I. But S plus I equals N. You're either escaped so far or infected. So S equals N minus I, those who aren't infected. So S times I times I over N equals N minus I times I over N equals IN over N minus I over N equals I minus I over N equals I times 1 minus 1 over N. Now, hope you survived that. I over N when I is small looks a lot like 0. So 1 minus I over N looks a lot like 1. So new infected today equals I, the previous infected. Very close to that for a long way up, and we'll see just how close in a second. What does that look like in numbers? I.T equals total infected, I.N equals new infected today. Day 0, I equals 1, I.N equals 0. Mr. or Mrs. S, infected, gets off a plane. Day 1, previous I equals 1, I.N equals 1, I.T equals 1 plus 1 equals 2. Day 2, previous I equals 2, I.N equals 2, I.T equals 2 plus 2 equals 4. Day 3, previous I equals 4, I.N equals 4, I.T equals 4 plus 4 equals 8. Day 4, previous I equals 8, I.N equals 8, I.T equals 8 plus 8 equals 16. See where we're going with this? 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. What is that? Exponential. We could do that with a B, but I won't read it out. However, each day the new cases is increasing by 2.5 times, 1.5, 3.75, 9.375, 23.4. That's pretty darn exponential again. And just to formalize it, this is what it looks like on a chart. For interest, here's an SI chart. No one escapes, no one recovers. E.g. herpes. And remind me, we have more than one person with herpes in the country. So how come, if no one escapes, we don't all have herpes? Now, lest you think I'm cheating you, here's an official SIR chart from Wikipedia. Note, susceptibles fade, people active with the disease, infected rise and fall in a distended pseudo-normal fashion, and recovered rise in a roughly sigmoid S curve. Here's our official SIR chart for 10 million population, 14-day disease, duration B equals 1, so unaccelerated. Basically, this is the official epidemiological prediction for Sweden. And I've already put Sweden on there. Can you spot it? No one escapes. We've set the calendar the same as the Swedish official World Health Organization data, 31st January 2020, the first case. The last person will be infected 15th of March. After that, there's just a fraction of a person left. And the last person will recover, I drops below 1, on 30th of September. That's not for any clinical reason. That's not bad luck on that person's part. That's simply that I over D is an absurd choice of allocating recovered. Just like I over D is an absurd choice of allocating births, with 1/9 of women giving birth 1 month after getting pregnant. Let's help you out. Translating the SAR chart into cases, nominally 20% of infected, though with testing it's pretty much anything these days, and 1% of infected dying instead of recovering. So at 14 days, they die not recover, DNR, whereas most recover not die. Wow, there's a lot going on there. Let's simplify and drop everything except the SIR. Cases, 20% of infected plus recovered. Remember, cases get reported and that they recover doesn't change that. And deaths, 1% of reported infected. So now we've just got one extra, that mauve line, a straight line on log scale, a true pure exponential. So the SIR curve for cases may not be utterly pure, only pure to say 5 decimal places, but it's close enough that my eye can't tell the difference. Till it miraculously turns at the last minute. I always thought Bill Gates was lying when he said go straight up exponentially and won't turn till the majority are infected. Neither normal nor exponential do that, but this model does. Sorry, Bill, that's one out of the 26 misrepresentations on Fox News that is still a misrepresentation, but it's not your invention. It's epidemiology's. And there's Sweden for real. A pretty good fit, wouldn't you say? See any straight lines? No. Not one of the 214 countries we track, basically all the WHO data, shows a straight line. Every single one shows a variant of this, sometimes in the climb phase, but always rapidly curling over our term and nothing to do with flattening the curve. What you're looking at is the natural curvature of a normal or humped curve, whether it's normal, log normal, or logistic, or some other variant. If you believe that lockdown worked because of some claim regarding that natural curvature, you've been lied to. I guarantee it because we've done the math. We know exactly where it was going and that nothing has changed. Except that somehow the reported virus stopped acting like a virus and is now exceeding the natural virus behaviour, staying up with extra cases and deaths both in the UK and Sweden. But for that you'd have to see our in-depth videos. Now here I want you to confront your demons, your loyalty to your master, your faith in the memes and stories told to you. This is Sweden, no lockdown Sweden, which everyone realizes is a totem and so it has to die or suffer, and so its numbers get strange. But no matter, and too late, because those early curves should never have happened. The size of the SIR model cases and deaths are massively out of line. The shape of the SIR model is massively out of line. Let's take it out of log and constrain the scale to 2 million, and the real cases are the pale blue line squashed at the bottom, barely visible. Do you still think your parent government got it right? Let's give death a chance to shine and put them on the right-hand axis. Yeah, looks like the model nailed it. No lockdown, no excuses. How do you feel? Is your mind desperately working to figure out how to debunk this nonsense, or are you going to give up and just resort to insults and run back to your parent government? They lied to you and abused you, but you'll protect them no matter what. I can show you 214 countries in a reality that disassembles the lie, that shows the real threat of COVID-19, and it is modest, minuscule to society. Protect your elderly and vulnerable, and that's it. And 400 deaths per 100 million in the Far East? Go back and look at those figures. It doesn't even factor as a threat to society, and you're in hiding obeying the government because that's what good people do. They obeyed Stalin because that's what good people do, loyal people, people who love their country. They obeyed Hitler because that's what good people do, loyal people, people who love their country. You just can't believe that it's us this time who are in the grip of people who think lying and fraud are just part of getting the message across. I can assure you, we do have that in common. The difference is, I see what they're reporting and I understand it. You see what the media reports and you believe it. Fact versus fiction, as simple as that. I told you this could be the best or worst day of your life. You have to either lie to yourself and deny the facts, go and do your own analysis, fact check me, so that you can believe the government, or you have to accept that the governments in the West have lied and dissembled to get you to give up democracy and get you into lockdown. If you always suspected that, you will now have the opportunity to know that you were right all along. You just didn't have the facts or the analysis to back it up. That would make this a good day, probably. If you dare not conceive of that, resent the hell out of anyone who suggests that, then happy lying day, because that's what you've got to do now. To yourself, to others, because you've seen and you could fact check, but you won't, because you're afraid of what you might find. I might be telling the truth, every single word, and then where would you be? Better stick to insults. less effort, far safer. It just doesn't change the facts. Yes, this was the simple version. You want this in much, much more detail? Fine. Come and pay attention to the rest of our videos, particularly the chart updates. See you there, or not. I'm Andrew Mather, a 60-year-old Brit, mathematician, financier, technologist, husband, biker, pilot, healer, whatever. Feel free to get in touch, andrew@peerlessreads.com or andrew@amather.com. Either should get to me.